It's that time of year once again, folks. You get the Christmas decorations up, you turn the TV on and put yourself on a nice festive movie, and you get yourself a big hot cup of hot chocolate. I make mine Irish, but that's besides the point. Although it can be nice, warm and cosy watching a nice festive movie, it's not always the case for the actors who have to actually act in these movies themselves. Even though it's a Christmas movie, it's not always fun and games. And yeah, little known fact about How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The actor in that movie, Jim Carrey, had a particularly difficult time when filming, and as a result, had to get the CIA involved to help him with training in order to play his role. Yes, today is a very festive topic indeed. Hello! Welcome to Brainspill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and on surface level, this video does sound particularly strange, but once I give you some context, you'll understand why this had to happen. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is a classic movie. Released in the year 2000, the movie is more of a modern version of the classic Dr. Seuss Christmas tale of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, being an animated special being released in 1966. I mean, a film released in the year 2000 may not sound modern by today's standards, seem as though that there's been the 2018 version of the Grinch movie that was recently released, but compared to 1966, the year 2000 is not that far away in the grand scheme of things. Anyway, the lead actor in the 2000 film, Jim Carrey, plays the Grinch, a grumpy, lonesome and bitter person who just pretty much hates everything, kinda like me. But the difference between us is I'm not hairy and green, and I also kinda like Christmas, unlike the Grinch. So yeah, for those of you that don't know the story, basically the Grinch just doesn't like Christmas and wants to ruin it for everybody in the town of Whoville. Kinda like your drunk uncle that comes for Christmas dinner, has a bit too much and then collapses down the stairs. Ruining Christmas for everybody. For anyone that's seen the 2000 version of the film, it's not the 1966 2D animation or the 2018 CGI animation, but this movie is live action with actual actors on the screen, including Taylor Momsen, who played Cindy Lou, the young innocent kid in the movie, but let's not talk about what she does now because that's not very Christmassy. Jim Carrey, who plays the Grinch, being an actor on screen, had to wear the Grinch costume. And whilst it looks impressive even by today's standards, there is a lot involved with the production and the preparation of putting this on, which is really where the start of our story is. Jim Carrey played the Grinch, and the character who had to wear makeup and put a costume on in order to achieve this iconic green protagonist who would go and steal Christmas. Whilst Jim Carrey was legendary for this performance, it was fraught with problems throughout, particularly down to the makeup and the suits he had to wear. The design is so intricate, in fact, it's not just a full body suit he'd wear. But being made out of yak hair dyed green, this had to be carefully prepared, interwoven into a spandex suit to make it look as realistic as possible. Jim Carrey would have to get into this suit, go through makeup for a long time before filming would even begin. He would even comment on this during an interview at one point where he said that the first time he got into the suit to prepare for filming, it took him 8.5 hours to get him ready. I don't know what on earth they could have been doing for 8.5 hours, but that's apparently how long it took. If you think about it, 8.5 hours, that's pretty much a full work day, and that's him just having the costume and makeup put on him. He hasn't even filmed anything yet. Like, I'm pretty sure anybody by that point would have gone insane. I mean, me personally, if anybody was to paint something on my face, I hate it after about 2 minutes, let alone 8.5 hours. If this was me, I'd be pretty pissed off at this point. And, well, Jim Carrey was no exception, because he was incredibly annoyed, and he was so annoyed, in fact, you know what? Maybe it's better if he tells you himself. It was like being buried alive each day. On the first day, I went back to my trailer, put my leg through the wall, and told Ron Howard I couldn't do the movie. The special effects makeup artist, Kazuhiro Fuji, would also have a challenge on this for his hands-on craft to make this look as realistic as possible. but also balancing the wants and needs of the actors who had to wear them to make sure that this wasn't too burdensome. He went on to comment about the movie and how difficult it was for him, saying that it would take him so long to do makeup, and after just 2 weeks, they were only 3 days through the schedule of filming. Going on to say that Jim Carrey would sometimes get so annoyed by this, he would storm off set, tear off his costume and makeup, and come back, meaning that they had to stop filming for the day because the Grinch just tore off his mask. For someone in his position to have to go ahead and do this, a professional, he must have been in a pretty bad state every day having to put this on, meaning that it must have been incredibly hard for him to actually do any filming. I can just imagine that this whole process must have been incredibly arduous. The suit must have been hot, limiting, itchy, and as a matter of fact, with it being a snowy set, every time fake snow would fall, it may sometimes land in those big yellow eye contacts that Jim Carrey was wearing, which, to add insult to injury, must have added to the discomfort he was experiencing. I mean, as an angry guy, this suited the character down to a T, because the Grinch was not fun to be around. But that shouldn't really affect the actor themselves. The actor doesn't need to be made angry, they can just act and be angry. So I think some additional work needed to be done to make this whole experience a little bit more manageable. So they sought some outside help to see if they could assist Jim Carrey with his acting, and throughout the whole of Hollywood, somebody came up with a particularly odd suggestion. Why not get the CIA involved? Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency, a group who are pretty much famed for their ability and prowess in able to resist interrogation. And this must have been that bad because that was the exact reason they were brought in for this project. Those skills were particularly handy when it came to trying to coach Jim Carrey on what he needs to do when he plays the Grinch. So a guy that trains CIA operatives how to endure torture was brought in. That's how I got through it. That and the Bee Gees. The only thing that worked to calm me through the makeup was everything that they'd done. I've no idea why, but they just made me happy. They'd be no Grinch without them. So yeah, the Bee Gees are pretty good, but that completely glosses over the fact that the CIA were involved and they were pretty much there to try and help him cope whenever he had to be the Grinch on set. He would go on to explain that he was taught various techniques by the CIA operatives to try and resist torture, which, wearing this costume, it must have almost felt like torture having to wear this thing. Which clearly it must have been that bad if the techniques for torture would have helped wear a costume for a Christmas movie. Some of the techniques that he was told to do was to eat everything in sight, change patterns and behaviours, and to even extend yourself to self-harm. Not anything serious, mind you, I'm completely not condoning anything like that, but when they say self-harm, what they basically mean is like a good punch to the thigh or a slap from someone you know around the back of the head. Just something to stimulate the senses and to perhaps distract you away from the fact that this costume you're wearing is literal hell. Jim Carrey would even go on and comment on the fact that smoking as well was also a really helpful tool for him to get through the actual filming. So in between shots, I can just imagine the Grinch stood behind the camera, sparking one up with a fag just before he has to go back out there and pretend to be the Grinch again. So basically, throughout the whole of the film, just imagine the Grinch stood there, chain smoking between every shot. That seems kind of on brand for the character, if you ask me. He even said that he would have to use a large cigarette holder to make sure that the yak hair on his costume didn't catch alight. Overall, he would do his hair and makeup 92 times for the movie, and each time must have felt like torture. But it would not take quite as long in the future as they managed to make some changes and cut down the prep time to just 2 hours to get the makeup on and another hour to get it off after the shooting was done for the day. Still a pain, but this must have been much more manageable. The makeup artist shared some of his experiences on the film, saying the following. In the makeup trailer, he just suddenly stands up and looks in the mirror, and pointing on his chin, he goes, "This colour is different from what you did yesterday. I was using the same colour I used yesterday." He says, "Fix it." And okay, you know, I fixed it. Every day was like that. Of course, the quote would go on, but generally what he would say is that it was a very uncomfortable time for him to be working there, having to do constant touch-ups, long hours, dealing with an irate Jim Carrey over the fact that his costume was literal hell. It was probably not a fun time for anybody on set, but as the makeup artist who was involved with the problems, it must have been even harder, particularly if there wasn't an awful lot you could do to change the costume. This was so difficult for him, in fact, is that he even said that he had to go for therapy once the filming was done. So, filming this movie is certainly not a walk in the park. The film was made and it was released, with monumental success. While it did well and it made a lot of money, many people would compare it to the 1966 classic. But as a standalone movie, it's good. It's not bad. And thankfully, it can stand on its own. Because at the end of the day, if it was at the very least somewhat worthy, I think Jim Carrey may have been able to accept the fact that he had to go through this in order to produce such a timeless classic. And you know what, thinking about it, I can't think of many actors who could probably have gone through something like this, to have stuck it out that long, and it was probably helpful as well having the CIA on board to help you through such an arduous journey. Yep, all in the name of a Christmas classic. So, the next time you watch The Grinch and you look at all the characters that go out of their way to try and save Christmas, in the background, the real person that saved Christmas was the CIA. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. If I had to compare myself to any character in any Christmas movie, the Grinch would probably be up there. Either that or Yukon Cornelius from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Either way, I'm pretty sure that I can find something that I relate to in that fashion. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.